Premium only 2025. When a mysterious package arrived at Dr. Sarah Chen's quiet Austin home, she never imagined it would change everything. The simple wooden box contained more than just a silver bracelet with a tiny rocket charm. It held coordinates to a promise made 15 years ago, and a desperate plea for help that would take her from Earth to the moon and back again. What started as a surprise gift from her former colleague Elon Musk would become the most important collaboration of their lives. Racing against time to save a sick boy and accidentally discovering medical technology that could heal the impossible. This is the story of how broken dreams can become the foundation for miracles, and how love truly can build bridges across the stars. The coffee was getting cold again. Dr. Sarah Chen sighed and pushed her reading glasses up her nose as she stared at the computer screen. Numbers filled the monitor, calculations for her new medical robot that could help doctors operate on patients far away. It was Tuesday morning in Austin, Texas. Sarah loved her quiet house on Maple Street. The birds sang outside her kitchen window, and the sun made golden squares on her wooden table. She had moved here 3 years ago after her divorce. It was peaceful, safe. Beep beep. A large white truck pulled into her driveway. Sarah frowned. She wasn't expecting any packages. The delivery man was tall and wore a brown uniform. He carried a small wooden box in his hands. "Dr. Sarah Chen?" he asked with a smile. "Yes, that's me." Sarah wiped her hands on her jeans. "But I didn't order anything. Someone did. Sign here, please." He handed her an electronic pad. Sarah signed her name quickly. Her fingers felt cold even though it was a warm spring day. Something about this felt different, important. The box was light but felt solid. It was made of beautiful dark wood, smooth like silk. There was no return address, no company name, just her name written in black ink across the top. Sarah knew that handwriting. Her heart began to beat faster as she carried the box inside. She set it on her kitchen table next to her cold coffee. The writing was neat and careful, just like she remembered from 15 years ago. With shaking fingers, Sarah opened the wooden box. Inside was soft white fabric, like clouds. Nestled in the fabric was a silver bracelet. It was simple and pretty, with one small charm hanging from it, a tiny silver rocket ship. Under the bracelet was a folded piece of paper. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened it. The note was short: "For the dreams we shared. Thank you for believing when no one else would." Sarah dropped into her kitchen chair. The bracelet slipped from her fingers and clinked softly on the table. She stared at the letter E at the bottom of the note. Elon Musk had sent her this gift. But why? They hadn't spoken in 15 years. Not since their small company failed and he left to work at Tesla. Not since the day she felt so hurt and angry that she told him never to call her again. Sarah picked up the bracelet and held it in the sunlight. The rocket charm was beautiful, with tiny details carved into the silver. But as she looked closer, something seemed odd. The charm felt heavier than it should. She found her magnifying glass in the kitchen drawer, the one she used for reading tiny parts lists. Under the glass, she could see something amazing. There were tiny numbers carved inside the rocket charm. They were so small that most people would never notice them. Numbers that looked like coordinates. Sarah grabbed a pen and paper. She wrote down the numbers carefully. 37.4419. Her laptop was still open on the table. With quick fingers, she typed the coordinates into a map website. A red dot appeared on her screen. The location was in California, on a hill near the coast, about an hour south of San Francisco. Sarah's coffee cup fell from her hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. She barely noticed the mess or the brown liquid spreading across the white tiles. She knew that place. She knew it very well. It was their special spot. The hill where she and Elon used to go when they needed to think. Where they would sit on the big gray rock and look out at the ocean. Where they made plans for changing the world. Where they had promised each other 15 years ago that they would launch humanity to the stars together. Sarah's phone buzzed on the counter, but she ignored it. Her mind was spinning like a tornado. Why would Elon send her coordinates to their old place? What did he want after all these years? She held the bracelet up to the light again. The rocket charm caught the sun and sparkled like a real star. But now she noticed something else, something that made her heart skip a beat. Carved on the back of the rocket, in letters so tiny she almost missed them, were two words: help me. Sarah's hands started shaking so hard she had to put the bracelet down. Elon Musk, the man who built electric cars and rockets, who is known all over the world, was asking for her help. But help with what? She looked at her computer screen again, at the map showing their old thinking spot. Then she looked at the bracelet. So simple and beautiful, but hiding so many secrets. Sarah had built a good life in Austin. She had her research, her quiet house, her peaceful routine. She had worked hard to forget about the dreams that broke her heart 15 years ago. But now Elon had found her again. And somehow she knew that everything was about to change. The question was she brave enough to find out what he wanted? Outside, the delivery truck drove away, leaving only tire marks in her driveway. Sarah sat alone in her kitchen, holding a silver bracelet that connected her to a past she thought was gone forever. The rocket charm seemed to wink at her in the sunlight, as if it knew a secret that could change the world. Sarah sat frozen in her kitchen chair, staring at the bracelet. The broken coffee cup lay forgotten on the floor. Her mind kept spinning back to memories she had locked away for 15 years. She closed her eyes and suddenly she was 25 again, working in a tiny office in Palo Alto, California. The smell of old pizza boxes and instant coffee filled the air. Computer screens glowed in the dark room, showing designs for electric car batteries and rocket engines. Quantum Leap Technologies. That was the name of their little company. Sarah smiled sadly, remembering how proud they were of that name. They thought they were going to make a quantum leap for all of humanity. Elon would work at the desk next to hers, his dark hair messy from running his hands through it when he was thinking hard. He always wore the same black t-shirt and jeans. Sometimes he would forget to eat for hours until Sarah brought him a sandwich. "Sarah, look at this," he would say, showing her a drawing of a rocket on a napkin. "What if we could make rockets that land themselves? What if we could send people to Mars?" Other people called Elon crazy. But Sarah saw the math behind his dreams. She could figure out how to make his wild ideas actually work. While he drew rockets, she calculated how much fuel they would need and what materials would be strong enough. They worked together like two parts of the same brain. Elon dreamed big, and Sarah made those dreams real. Late at night, when the office was quiet, they would share Chinese food from white boxes. Elon would tell her about his plans to help humanity become a spacefaring species. Sarah would show him her designs for robots that could help people. "We're gonna change everything," Elon would say, his eyes bright with excitement. Together, Sarah would add, and they would shake hands over the empty food containers. But then the money ran out. Sarah opened her eyes and felt tears on her cheeks. She wiped them away quickly. Those days were over. That Sarah was gone. She picked up the bracelet again and looked at the tiny "Help Me" carved on the rocket. Why would Elon need help? He had everything now. Billions of dollars. Famous companies, rockets that actually flew to space. Sarah got up and stepped carefully around the broken coffee cup. She needed to think, and thinking required action. She went to her home office and pulled out an old cardboard box from the bottom drawer of her desk. Inside the box were things from Quantum Leap Technologies. Their business cards with the faded logo, photos of their team. All 6 of them, young and hopeful. A USB drive with their old computer files. Sarah plugged the USB drive into her laptop. She hadn't looked at these files in years. Most of it was technical stuff. Battery designs, rocket calculations, business plans that never worked out. But buried deep in the folders, she found something that made her heart stop. It was a file called promise.txt, a simple text document that she had completely forgotten about. She double-clicked it, and words appeared on her screen. Sarah and Elon's pact. May 15, 2009. We promise to work together to help humanity reach the stars. We will never give up on this dream, even if the whole world thinks we're crazy. We will find a way to make life better for everyone on Earth and beyond. No matter what happens to our company, this promise will always be true. SC and EM. Sarah stared at the screen. She remembered writing this late one night when they were feeling discouraged. Investors had been saying no to their ideas. Other companies were stealing their designs. They felt like the whole world was against them. But they had made this promise to each other and hidden it in their computer code. a secret pact that no one else knew about. Now, 15 years later, Elon was reaching out to her again. The bracelet, the coordinates, the hidden message. It all pointed to one thing. He was reminding her of their promise. Sarah scrolled through more files and found their old email conversations. She read messages about late-night brainstorming sessions, shared dreams, and plans for the future. In one email, Elon had written, "Sarah, you're the only person who really understands the vision. Together we can do anything." The last email in the folder was from the day their company failed. It was from Sarah to Elon. "I can't believe you're leaving. I thought we were a team. Don't contact me again." She had been so angry, so hurt. She felt like Elon had abandoned their dreams for money and fame. But reading the messages now, Sarah saw something different. In his final emails, Elon had begged her to come with him to Tesla. He wanted them to stay together and keep working on their shared vision. Sarah had said no. She had chosen to stay and try to save their dying company instead of following him to something bigger. Maybe she had been wrong. Sarah's phone rang, making her jump. She looked at the caller ID, but it was just her neighbor asking about borrowing her lawnmower. After the short conversation, Sarah sat back down at her computer. She opened a new browser window and searched for Elon Musk's recent projects. Pages and pages of results appeared. SpaceX rockets, Tesla cars, plans for Mars colonies, brain-computer interfaces. Everything Elon was doing now connected back to their old dreams. He was actually making their shared vision come true, just like they had promised each other 15 years ago. But he was doing it alone. Sarah looked at the bracelet sitting next to her laptop. The rocket charm caught the light from her computer screen. She thought about the coordinates pointing to their special place, about the tiny "help me" message, about the promise they had made to each other. Slowly, she began to understand. This wasn't just about nostalgia or friendship. Elon needed her for something specific. Something important enough to break 15 years of silence. Sarah picked up her car keys from the desk. The coordinates were a 6-hour drive from Austin to California. She could be there by evening if she left now. But did she really want to open this door again? Her life in Austin was good, safe, predictable. Sarah looked at her computer screen at all the amazing things Elon had accomplished. Then she looked at her own research files, her work on medical robots that could help people in places where doctors couldn't go. Suddenly she saw a connection she had never noticed before. Her current work and Elon's space projects weren't separate things. They were two pieces of the same puzzle. A puzzle they had started building together 15 years ago. Sarah closed her laptop and picked up the bracelet. She fastened it around her wrist, feeling the weight of the rocket charm against her skin. Whatever Elon needed help with, it was big enough to make him reach out after all these years. It was important enough to risk their painful history. And maybe, just maybe, it was the chance to finally keep the promise they had made to each other long ago. Sarah threw some clothes into a backpack and grabbed her water bottle. She left a note for her neighbor to water her plants and locked the front door behind her. The silver bracelet felt warm against her wrist as she started her blue Honda and backed out of the driveway. The drive from Austin to California would take her through desert and mountains. Sarah had made this trip once before, 15 years ago, when she moved away from their failed company. Back then, she had been running away from broken dreams. Now she was driving towards something unknown. As the miles passed, Sarah's mind wandered to the coordinates. Why would Elon want to meet at their old thinking spot? That hill overlooking the Pacific Ocean had been their special place when work got too stressful. They would drive there in Elon's old Toyota and sit on the big gray rock they called the Thinking Stone. The ocean stretched out in front of them like a blue carpet, and they would talk about rockets and electric cars and making the world better. It was there, sitting on that rock, that they had made their promise to launch humanity to the stars together. Sarah stopped for gas in New Mexico as the sun began to set. Her phone buzzed with a text from her research partner at the lab. "Hope your family emergency works out okay. See you next week." Family emergency. That's what Sarah had told her team when she left so suddenly. But maybe it wasn't really a lie. In some ways, Elon had been like family during their time at Quantum Leap. They had been closer than brother and sister, united by dreams that seemed impossible to everyone else. Sarah bought a sandwich and got back on the road. The sky turned purple and orange as she drove through Arizona. Stars began to appear, and she thought about all the rockets Elon had launched toward those same stars. She reached the California coast just as the sun was rising. The familiar smell of salt air made her heart ache with memories. Sarah hadn't been back to this area since she left 15 years ago. The GPS led her up a winding road into the hills above the ocean. She recognized every turn, every tree. Finally, she parked at the small dirt area where she and Elon used to leave their car. The hiking trail was just like she remembered. A narrow path through tall grass and wildflowers. It took 10 minutes to reach the top of the hill where their thinking stone sat waiting. But something was different. Near the base of the gray rock, the earth had been disturbed. Someone had dug a small hole and filled it back in. Fresh dirt stood out against the older soil around it. Sarah knelt down and began digging with her hands. The dirt was soft and came away easily. About a foot down, her fingers touched something hard and smooth. She pulled out a small metal cylinder like a thermos, but smaller. It was made of brushed steel and felt expensive. On the side was a tiny SpaceX logo. Sarah's heart pounded as she unscrewed the top of the cylinder. Inside was a USB drive wrapped in white cloth and another folded note. With shaking hands, she opened the note. "Sarah, I'm working on something that could save lives. But I need the one person who truly understood the original dream. The world thinks I'm crazy, but you always saw the real vision. Will you meet me? Call the number on the USB drive when you're ready." Sarah looked around the empty hilltop. The ocean stretched out below her, and seagulls cried in the distance. She was alone with this mysterious message and a USB drive that might contain anything. She pulled out her laptop from her backpack and plugged in the drive. Several folders appeared on her screen: medical project, technical specs, and personal. Sarah clicked on personal first. Inside was a single video file named For Sarah. She double-clicked it, and suddenly Elon's face filled her screen. He looked older than she remembered, with more lines around his eyes. But his voice was the same when he started speaking. "Hi Sarah, if you're watching this, it means you came to our special place. Thank you. I know I have no right to ask for your help, after 15 years. I know I hurt you when I left. But I need you to know that I never stopped thinking about our promise." Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she watched him talk. "I'm working on a project that connects to everything we dreamed about back then. It's a medical robot that could perform surgery in space on Mars colonies or in remote places on Earth, where doctors can't go. But every prototype has failed. The technology isn't good enough yet." Elon paused and looked directly at the camera. "Then I saw your research on medical robotics. Your work on haptic feedback systems. Technology that lets doctors feel what a robot is touching. Sarah, your research is exactly what this project needs. You're the missing piece." The video showed technical drawings of a surgical robot. It looked incredibly advanced, but Sarah could immediately see problems with the design. "There's something else," Elon continued. "This isn't just about helping future Mars colonists. My son Xavier has a rare condition that might require surgery during our planned mission to the lunar base. If something happens to him up there, no human surgeon can help, but a robot could be sent ahead of us." Sarah paused the video and stared at the screen. Elon had a son who might need surgery in space? The weight of what he was asking hit her all at once. She clicked on the technical specs folder. Hundreds of files appeared. Engineering drawings, test results, failure reports. Sarah spent an hour reading through them, her excitement growing with each document. The surgical robot was brilliant in concept, but flawed in execution. The designers had focused on making it precise, but hadn't solved the problem of working in zero gravity or with communication delays between Earth and space. But Sarah's research could fix those problems. Her haptic feedback systems would let a doctor on Earth feel exactly what the robot was touching in space. Her work on autonomous medical systems could help the robot make safe decisions when communication was impossible. She opened the medical project folder and found detailed plans for testing the robot on the International Space Station, then on the Moon, and eventually on Mars. It wasn't just about one surgery, it was about creating a medical system that could keep humans healthy anywhere in the solar system. Sarah closed her laptop and looked out at the ocean. Waves crashed against the rocks below, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. She thought about Xavier, a young boy who might need this technology to survive. She thought about future astronauts who would depend on robotic doctors to keep them alive. But mostly she thought about the promise she and Elon had made on this very hill 15 years ago. Her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "The lab is in Hawthorne, California, 1 hour south of where you are now. When you're ready, call me. We have a lot of work to do." Sarah looked at her phone, then at the ocean, then at the USB drive in her hand. Everything she had built in Austin, her quiet life, her safe routine, her small research projects, suddenly felt very far away. But sitting here on their thinking stone, surrounded by memories of impossible dreams that Elon had somehow made real, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in 15 years. Hope. She picked up her phone and dialed the number. The phone rang once, twice. Sarah's heart beat so fast she could hear it in her ears. What would she say to him? What would he say to her? "Sarah?" Elon's voice came through the phone, quiet and uncertain. "I found it," she said simply. "I watched your video." There was a long pause. Sarah could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, more tired than the confident public speaker everyone knew. "You came to our place. I had to. Those coordinates, I couldn't ignore them. I wasn't sure you would remember." Sarah looked out at the ocean, the same view they had shared so many times. "I remember everything, Elon. The good and the bad." Another pause. Sarah could picture him running his hand through his hair the way he used to when he was nervous. "I know you're angry with me," he said finally. "I know I have no right to ask for your help after what happened." "Why now?" Sarah asked. "After 15 years of silence, why reach out now?" "Because I was wrong." The words came out quickly, like he had been holding them back for years. "I was wrong to leave without fighting for our dream. I was wrong to think I could do this alone. And I was wrong to let my pride keep me from calling you." Sarah felt tears in her eyes again. She had imagined this conversation 1,000 times over the years, but never like this. "Tell me about Xavier," she said. Elon's breath caught. "He's 12. Brilliant. Just like his mother. He loves rockets and robots and wants to be an engineer when he grows up. He asks me every day when he can come to work with me and help build spaceships. But he's sick. He has a rare genetic condition. It affects his heart. The doctors say he needs surgery, but..." Elon's voice broke a little. "Sarah, we're planning a 6-month mission to the lunar base. Xavier wants to come with us so badly. It would be the adventure of his lifetime. But if something happens to him up there, if he needs emergency surgery, no human surgeon can make the trip," Sarah finished. "The trip takes 3 days each way, and we can only send supply rockets every 2 months. By the time we could get a doctor to the moon, it would be too late." Sarah closed her eyes and tried to imagine it. A sick child in space. Millions of miles from help. Parents watching helplessly as their son suffered. "The robot could be sent ahead of us," Elon continued. "It would already be there, ready to help if needed. But every design we've tried has failed. The remote surgery doesn't work with the communication delay. The robot can't make the right decisions when it loses contact with Earth." "I saw the technical specs," Sarah said. "The concept is brilliant, but the execution has problems. That's why I need you. Your research on haptic feedback systems, the technology that lets doctors feel what a robot is touching, that could solve the delay problem. And your work on autonomous medical decision-making could help the robot work independently when needed." Sarah stood up from the thinking stone and walked to the edge of the hill. The ocean breeze blew her hair back as she thought about what Elon was asking. "This isn't just about Xavier, is it?" she said. "No, it's about keeping our promise. If humans are going to live on Mars, if we're going to spread throughout the solar system, we need medical technology that can work anywhere. This robot is the foundation for everything else." Sarah understood now. This wasn't just about saving one boy, although that was important enough. This was about building the medical infrastructure that would make human space exploration possible. "How much time do we have?" she asked. "The lunar mission launches in 3 months. If we don't have a working surgical system by then, I'll have to cancel the whole program. Xavier will be heartbroken, and humanity's expansion into space will be set back by years." 3 months. Sarah thought about her quiet life in Austin, her research lab, her comfortable routine. Could she give all that up to work with Elon again? "I've been following your work, Elon said quietly. "Every paper you've published, every conference presentation. You've become exactly what I knew you would. One of the world's leading experts in medical robotics. You've been watching my career? I never stopped believing in you, Sarah. I just didn't know how to come back. Sarah felt a warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. Despite everything that had happened between them, despite the hurt and anger, Elon had been quietly supporting her work from a distance. The team you've assembled, Sarah said, thinking about the technical files she'd read. They're brilliant engineers. Why do you need me specifically? Because they're building a robot. I need someone who can build a partner. Someone who understands that the best technology isn't just about circuits and programming, it's about connecting human hearts and minds across impossible distances. Sarah knew he was right. Her approach to medical robotics was different from other engineers. She didn't just think about making machines work. She thought about helping doctors save lives, even when they couldn't be in the same room as their patients. If I say yes, Sarah said slowly, I want to know everything. No more secrets. No more surprises. We work as real partners this time. Deal, Elon said immediately. Complete transparency. You'll have access to everything. All our research, all our resources, all our plans. And Xavier? I want to meet him. If I'm building technology to potentially save his life, I need to understand what we're fighting for. He's actually here with me now, at the lab. He helps me test robot prototypes sometimes. He'd love to meet you. Sarah looked at her car parked at the bottom of the hill, then at the USB drive in her hand. She thought about the promise she and Elon had made 15 years ago, sitting on this very rock. I have one more condition, she said. Anything. When we succeed, not if, when. We name the first space medical facility after our old company, Quantum Leap Medical Center. Elon laughed, and for a moment he sounded exactly like the young dreamer Sarah remembered. I was hoping you'd say that. I've already reserved the name. Sarah smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Of course you have. So you'll come? You'll help us? Sarah looked out at the ocean one more time, at the horizon where the blue water met the blue sky. Somewhere beyond that horizon, her old friend was waiting with a sick son and an impossible dream that needed her help to come true. Send me the lab address, she said. I'll be there in an hour. Sarah? Yes? Thank you. For believing in us again. For believing in him. After she hung up, Sarah sat quietly on their thinking stone for a few more minutes. The sun was getting higher and the ocean sparkled like diamonds. She thought about Xavier, a 12-year-old boy who wanted to see the stars. She thought about all the future astronauts who would need medical help far from Earth. But mostly, she thought about second chances and the power of keeping promises, even when they seemed impossible. Sarah packed up her laptop and walked back down the hill to her car. As she drove toward Hawthorne, and whatever waited for her there, the silver bracelet caught the sunlight through her windshield. The rocket charm no longer looked like just a piece of jewelry. It looked like what it really was, a symbol of dreams that were about to become reality. Sarah drove south on Highway 101, following her GPS toward Hawthorne. The SpaceX facility was huge. She could see the white buildings and rocket assembly areas from miles away. Her hands felt sweaty on the steering wheel as she pulled into the visitor parking lot. A security guard checked her name on a list and gave her a visitor badge. Dr. Chen, Mr. Musk is waiting for you in Building 7. Take the blue line on the floor. Sarah followed the painted blue line through hallways filled with engineers carrying tablets and rocket parts. Through windows, she could see massive rocket engines being built and tested. The air hummed with the sound of machinery and the excitement of people building the future. Building 7 was quieter. Sarah knocked on the door marked Private Lab and heard Elon's voice. Come in. He stood with his back to her, looking at a wall covered with technical drawings. He seemed taller than she remembered, but also more tired. When he turned around, Sarah saw the lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 15 years ago. Sarah. He smiled, but it was nervous, uncertain. You came. I said I would. They stood looking at each other for a moment, 15 years of separation hanging between them like a wall. Then Elon stepped forward and held out his hand. Partners, he asked. Sarah shook his hand firmly. Partners. The lab was impressive. Computer screens showed 3D models of the surgical robot. A prototype sat on a metal table, its silver arms folded like a sleeping spider. Medical equipment filled the shelves, and test results covered every surface. "Where's Xavier?" Sarah asked. In the testing room with Dr. Martinez, our chief medical advisor. Xavier loves to watch the robot practice on training dummies. He says it looks like a helpful alien. Elon led her to another door. Through the window, Sarah saw a boy sitting in a wheelchair, watching a robot perform precise movements on a practice patient. The boy had dark hair like his father and bright, curious eyes. "He looks strong," Sarah said. "He is. But his condition is getting worse. Some days are better than others, but..." Elon's voice trailed off. Sarah studied the robot through the window. Even from here, she could see the problems. Its movements were too slow, too careful. In a real emergency, those delays could be deadly. "Show me the test results," she said. For the next 2 hours, Elon walked Sarah through everything. The robot could perform simple procedures, but anything complex failed. The communication delay between Earth and space made remote surgery nearly impossible. When the robot tried to work independently, it made dangerous mistakes. "We've run 27 test surgeries," Elon explained, pulling up data on his computer. 98 failures. The robot is either too slow or too aggressive. We can't find the right balance. Sarah studied the numbers. She had seen similar problems in her own research, but she had found solutions that this team hadn't considered. "The problem isn't the robot," she said. "It's the control system. You're thinking about this backwards." "What do you mean?" "You're trying to make a robot that works like a human surgeon. But space surgery isn't human surgery. The environment is different. The stakes are different. The physics are different. You need to build something entirely new." Sarah moved to the whiteboard and started drawing diagrams. "My haptic feedback system doesn't just let doctors feel what the robot touches. It lets them understand the environment in ways humans normally can't. Pressure, temperature, electrical activity. Information that could make surgery in space actually easier than surgery on Earth." Elon watched her draw, his eyes growing brighter. "You're talking about augmented surgery, making the robot better than human hands." "Exactly, and the AI system doesn't need to replace human judgment. It needs to buy time when communication is impossible and enhance human decisions when connection is restored." As Sarah explained her ideas, she felt the old excitement returning. This was what she had missed, the thrill of solving impossible problems with someone who understood the vision. A knock on the door interrupted them. Dr. Martinez, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, peeked in. "Xavier wants to meet Dr. Chen," she said with a smile. Sarah followed them to the testing room. Xavier looked up from his wheelchair as they entered, his face lighting up with curiosity. "Are you the robot lady?" he asked. "I guess I am," Sarah said, kneeling down to his level. "Are you the space explorer?" "Not yet, but I will be. Dad says you're going to help make the medical robot work so I can go to the moon." Sarah looked into Xavier's eyes and saw the same spark of determination she remembered in his father. This boy wasn't afraid. He was excited about the adventure ahead. "What do you think about the robot?" Sarah asked. "It's pretty good, but it's too scared," Xavier said seriously. "It keeps stopping to ask questions instead of just helping people. If I was hurt, I wouldn't want the robot to be scared." Sarah glanced at Elon, surprised. This 12-year-old had identified exactly the same problem she had seen in the test data. "You're absolutely right," she told Xavier. "The robot needs to be brave, like you." Xavier beamed. "Can you teach it to be brave?" "I think so, but I'll need your help. You understand what the robot needs to do better than anyone." "Really? I can help build it?" Sarah looked at Elon, who nodded. "Really? We're going to be a team." Later, as Xavier worked with Dr. Martinez on his physical therapy, Sarah and Elon returned to the lab. The technical files were spread across the table, and Sarah began making notes on improvements. "He's remarkable," she said. "He gets that from his mother. She was brilliant, a biomedical engineer who worked on artificial hearts before she died. Xavier has her mind and her courage." Sarah looked up from her notes. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. It happened 3 years ago. Cancer. We tried everything." But Elon's voice was quiet. "Xavier was only 9 when we lost her. That's part of why this project matters so much. He's all I have left of her, and I can't lose him too." Sarah felt her heartache for both of them. No wonder Elon was so determined to make this work. Xavier wasn't just his son, he was his connection to the woman he had loved. The lunar mission, Sarah said. It's not just about space exploration, is it? Elon shook his head. Xavier's mother always wanted to see the Earth from space. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I would take Xavier to see the view she never got to see. The lunar base will be the first place civilians can stay long enough to really experience space. Sarah understood now. This wasn't just about testing technology or advancing science. It was about a father keeping a promise to his dead wife and giving his sick son the adventure of a lifetime. But only if we can keep him safe, she said. Only if we can keep him safe. Sarah looked at the robot prototype, then at the test results, then at the technical challenges that lay ahead. 3 months to build something that had never been done before. 3 months to create technology that could save Xavier's life and change space medicine forever. I need to see all the data, she said. Everything. Not just the robot tests, but Xavier's medical records, the space environment specifications, the communication protocols. If we're going to do this, we need to understand every variable. Elon handed her a thick folder. It's all here. But Sarah, there's something else I need to tell you. He opened his laptop and showed her a file she hadn't seen before. It was labeled Project History and contained dozens of research papers and technical documents. Look at the citations, he said. Sarah scrolled through the papers and gasped. Over and over again, she saw references to her own research. Her work on haptic feedback systems, her papers on autonomous medical decision-making, her innovations in remote surgery technology. You've been using my research all along, she said. Building on every advancement we've made has been inspired by your work. I always gave you credit in the technical papers, but I never contacted you directly because you thought I hated you? Because I thought you had good reason to hate me. Sarah stared at the screen, seeing years of her research woven into Elon's projects. He hadn't just been following her career from a distance. He had been incorporating her innovations into his work, always giving her proper credit but never reaching out to collaborate directly. My God, Elon, we've been working on the same project for 15 years without even knowing it. I know, and that's why I finally had to contact you. This robot isn't just about combining our current research. It's about finishing what we started together back at Quantum Leap. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she understood the full scope of what Elon was telling her. Their old partnership had never really ended. It had just been separated by pride and misunderstanding. The medical robot, she said slowly. It's not a new project. It's the evolution of everything we dreamed about 15 years ago. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every step forward. It all goes back to our original vision, helping humanity reach the stars safely. Sarah looked around the lab, at the prototypes and test results, and technical drawings. She thought about Xavier in the next room, brave and determined despite his illness. She thought about their old promise and the dreams that had brought them together. How much time do we really have? She asked. Elon was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled up another file on his computer. Xavier's condition is progressing faster than we expected, he said softly. The doctors think he has maybe 6 months before he'll need surgery. If we wait too long to launch the lunar mission, he might not be strong enough to make the trip. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Not 3 months, they had even less time than she thought. And if the surgery happens on Earth instead of the Moon, it's much more dangerous here. His specific condition responds better to low-gravity environments. The Moon base isn't just safer for him because of the robot, it's safer because of the reduced gravity. Sarah stared at the medical data on the screen. Xavier needed to be on the Moon for the surgery to have the best chance of success. But the only way he could safely go to the Moon was if their robot was there to help him. It was an impossible circle with no easy solution. We have to make this work, she said. We will, Elon replied. We have to. As Sarah gathered the technical files to take back to her hotel that night, she realized that this project was bigger than she had imagined. It wasn't just about building a robot or keeping a promise or even saving Xavier's life. It was about proving that the dreams she and Elon had shared 15 years ago were not only possible, they were necessary for humanity's future among the stars. Sarah barely slept that night. She sat in her hotel room with technical papers spread across the bed, making notes and sketching ideas until sunrise. The robot design had potential, but it needed major changes to work in the harsh environment of space. She arrived at the SpaceX lab at 6 in the morning, coffee in hand and determination in her heart. Elon was already there, looking like he hadn't slept either. "I've been thinking about the control system all night," Sarah said, setting down her notes. "The problem isn't just the communication delay. It's that we're trying to make the robot work like a human surgeon. But humans can't survive in space without life support. The robot doesn't need air or water or warmth. We should use that advantage." Elon looked at her sketches with growing excitement. "You want to redesign the entire approach? I want to revolutionize it. Instead of remote control, we create a hybrid system. The robot learns from watching hundreds of surgeries on Earth, then adapts those skills to space conditions. When communication with Earth is possible, human doctors guide the complex decisions. When it's not, the robot uses what it learned to keep the patient stable." "That's brilliant." "But Sarah," Elon pointed to a calendar on the wall, "we have 10 weeks until launch. 10 weeks to completely rebuild the system." Sarah looked at the calendar, then at Xavier's medical chart pinned to the wall. The boy's condition was getting worse each week. They didn't have the luxury of taking their time. "Then we work fast," she said. "I'll move my research from Austin here. We'll need your best engineers, access to your AI systems, and," Sarah paused, "and Xavier's help." "Xavier? He understands what the robot needs to do better than anyone. He's not afraid of it, and he sees its weaknesses clearly. If we're building this to save his life, he should help design it." Elon smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. He would love that. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of 18-hour workdays. Sarah moved into a small apartment near the SpaceX facility. Her research equipment was shipped from Austin and set up in the lab. The team grew to include 12 engineers, 3 doctors, and 2 AI specialists. Xavier came to the lab every day after his tutoring sessions. Despite his wheelchair and the medical equipment he needed, he became an essential part of the team. He tested the robot's movements, suggested improvements, and asked questions that led to breakthrough solutions. "The robot's hands are too big," Xavier observed one afternoon, watching it practice on a training dummy. "If I was really sick, it might hurt me by accident." Sarah looked at the robot's surgical tools. Xavier was right. They were designed for adult patients, not children. "We need pediatric tools," she told the engineering team. "Everything scaled down for smaller patients. But that means redesigning all the attachments," one engineer protested. "Then we redesign them," Sarah said firmly. "This robot needs to work for patients of all ages." As the weeks passed, Sarah watched Xavier's condition carefully. Some days he was energetic and excited, helping tests and asking endless questions about space medicine. Other days he was tired and weak, needing to rest while the robot practiced nearby. On those difficult days, Sarah saw the fear in Elon's eyes, though he tried to hide it from his son. "The lunar mission isn't just about adventure for him," Elon told Sarah one evening as they watched Xavier sleep in the medical observation room. "It's about hope. He knows his condition is serious, but he believes that going to space will somehow make everything better." "Maybe it will," Sarah said. "The low-gravity environment really could help his recovery, and having something exciting to look forward to is powerful medicine. But only if we can keep him safe up there." Sarah squeezed Elon's shoulder. "We will. I promise." The robot was improving rapidly. Sarah's haptic feedback system allowed doctors on Earth to feel exactly what the robot was touching, even with the communication delay. The AI system learned to recognize dangerous situations and take protective action when human guidance wasn't available. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Xavier was watching the robot practice a heart procedure when he suddenly sat up in his wheelchair. "It's doing it wrong," he said. Dr. Martinez looked at the monitors. "The procedure looks correct to me." "No. Look at the patient's face." Xavier pointed to the training dummy. "Real patients get scared during surgery, even when they're asleep. Their heart rate goes up, their breathing changes. The robot should watch for that, and be more gentle when patients are afraid." Sarah stared at Xavier, then at the robot's sensors. The boy was absolutely right. They had focused so much on the technical aspects of surgery that they had forgotten about the emotional needs of patients. "Emotional monitoring," Sarah said. grabbing her tablet. The robot should track stress indicators and adjust its approach based on how the patient is feeling. Can machines really understand feelings? Xavier asked. Your robot will, Sarah promised, because you're teaching it to care about patients, not just treat them. By the 8th week, they were ready for major testing. The robot had passed all its basic trials and was performing complex procedures with remarkable precision. Sarah felt confident that they were close to success. Then, disaster struck. During the most important test of the project, a simulated emergency surgery that mimicked exactly the kind of operation Xavier might need, something went terribly wrong. The robot was performing beautifully, its movements smooth and precise. Sarah was controlling it through her haptic feedback system, feeling every touch and adjustment. Everything seemed perfect. Then, without warning, the robot's main processor overloaded. Sparks flew from its control unit, and the machine's arms jerked violently before freezing in place. The training dummy was destroyed. Synthetic blood covered the testing table. If this had been a real patient, they would have died instantly. Silence filled the lab. Everyone stared at the smoking wreckage of their robot, their months of work reduced to twisted metal and broken dreams. What happened? Elon asked quietly. Sarah was already pulling data from the robot's memory banks, her hands shaking as she typed. The AI system tried to process too much information at once. When the patient's condition became critical, the robot attempted to access every medical procedure in its database simultaneously. It couldn't handle the load. Can we fix it? Dr. Martinez asked. Sarah looked at the diagnostic reports flooding her screen. The damage was extensive, not just to the robot, but to the entire control system. Not in 2 weeks, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. We'd need at least a month to rebuild everything. Elon sat down heavily in a chair, his face pale. The launch window closes in 14 days. If we miss it, the next opportunity isn't for 6 months. Xavier might not have 6 months. Dr. Martinez said softly. Sarah looked through the lab window at Xavier, who was napping in the observation room, unaware that his dreams of space travel had just gone up in smoke. The boy who had been so brave, so helpful, so full of hope. He was depending on them to make this work. There has to be another way, Sarah said desperately. What if we simplify the design? One of the engineers suggested. Remove some of the advanced features? Then it won't be capable enough to handle real emergencies, Sarah replied. We can't send Xavier to space with a robot that might fail when he needs it most. Elon stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rocket assembly buildings where their lunar spacecraft was being prepared for launch. Maybe we should postpone the mission. No. The voice came from behind them. Everyone turned to see Xavier in his wheelchair, having woken up from his nap. We can't give up now. Xavier, you should be resting, Elon said, moving toward his son. I heard what happened. The robot broke during the test. Xavier's voice was weak but determined. But that doesn't mean we quit. That means we try harder. Sarah knelt down beside Xavier's wheelchair. Sweetie, I don't know if we can fix this in time. Xavier looked at her with those bright, serious eyes. You told me the robot would learn to be brave like me. But maybe it doesn't need to learn that. Maybe it just needs to remember what you taught it. Sarah frowned, not understanding. What do you mean? The robot tried to think of everything at once, right? But when I'm scared or sick, I don't try to remember every doctor visit I've ever had. I just remember one thing, that my dad loves me and wants to help me feel better. Sarah's breath caught. Xavier was talking about focus, about the robot learning to concentrate on one simple goal instead of trying to process every possibility. Single-purpose programming, she whispered. What? Elon asked. Sarah was already running to her computer. Xavier's right. We've been trying to make the robot too smart. Instead of programming it to handle every medical situation, we program it for one specific goal. Keep Xavier safe until human help arrives. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as ideas flooded her mind. We don't need a robot that can perform every surgery. We need a robot that can stabilize one specific patient with one specific condition until communication with Earth is restored. Elon looked over her shoulder at the code she was writing. That's actually brilliant. Instead of a general-purpose surgical robot, we create a Xavier-specific medical assistant. Exactly. It knows his medical history, his specific needs, his body chemistry. It's not trying to be a human doctor, it's trying to be Xavier's robot. The team gathered around Sarah's workstation as she outlined the new approach. Instead of rebuilding the complex AI system, they would create a focused program designed specifically for Xavier's medical needs. "Can we do this in 2 weeks?" Dr. Martinez asked. Sarah looked at the calendar, then at Xavier, then at Elon. "We have to. This boy is going to see the Earth from space. And he's going to come home safely." Xavier smiled from his wheelchair. "I knew you'd figure it out. You and Dad always do when you work together." As the team began the frantic work of rebuilding their robot with just 14 days until launch, Sarah realized that Xavier had taught them something more important than engineering. He had reminded them that the best technology comes not from trying to solve every problem, but from focusing completely on solving the one problem that matters most. In this case, bringing one brave boy safely home from the stars. The next 5 days passed like a hurricane of activity. Sarah barely left the lab, surviving on coffee and determination. The team worked around the clock, rebuilding the robot's brain to focus specifically on Xavier's needs instead of trying to handle every medical situation possible. Status report. Sarah called out on Friday morning, checking her watch. 9 days until launch. "Pediatric surgical tools are complete," announced Dr. Kim, the team's specialist in children's medicine. "All sized perfectly for Xavier's body measurements. Haptic feedback system is online and calibrated," added Marcus, Sarah's lead engineer. "Communication delay simulation is working perfectly. Xavier's specific medical protocols are programmed and tested," said Dr. Martinez. "The robot now knows everything about his condition, his medication needs, his heart patterns, even his favorite songs to keep him calm during procedures." Sarah felt a spark of hope. Maybe they really could pull this off. "Let's run the big test," she announced. The team gathered around the new robot prototype. It looked similar to the old one, but Sarah had insisted on one important change. Instead of cold, clinical white, this robot was painted a soft blue color that Xavier had chosen himself. "It looks friendlier," Xavier had explained from his wheelchair. "If I'm scared, I want to see something that looks like it cares about me." The test began with a simulation of Xavier's exact medical condition during a space emergency. Sarah put on her haptic feedback gloves and began guiding the robot through the procedure. She could feel every movement, every touch, as if her own hands were performing the surgery. For an hour, everything went perfectly. The robot responded to her commands instantly. When communication was cut off, simulate the delay between Earth and Moon, the robot continued working safely on its own, following the specific protocols they had programmed for Xavier. "Blood pressure stable," Dr. Martinez called out, monitoring the test patient's vital signs. "Robot performance. Excellent," Marcus reported. "All systems operating within normal parameters." Sarah began to smile. They were going to make it. After all the setbacks and failures, they had created something that could actually save Xavier's life. Then the alarm started blaring. "What's happening?" Sarah shouted over the noise. Marcus was frantically typing at his computer. "Someone's hacking into our system. The robot's communication link has been compromised." On the main screen, Sarah watched in horror as the robot suddenly stopped following her commands. Its movements became chaotic and dangerous. The test patient's vital signs spiked into the danger zone. "Shut it down," Sarah yelled. But it was too late. The robot's arms swung wildly, destroying the test equipment and sending surgical tools flying across the room. Sparks flew from damaged computers, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. When the chaos finally stopped, the lab looked like a war zone. Their beautiful blue robot sat motionless in the center of the destruction, its systems completely fried. "Is everyone okay?" Elon asked, rushing into the lab after hearing the alarms. "We're fine," Sarah said numbly. "But the robot is completely destroyed," Marcus finished. "Whoever did this didn't just hack our system. They planted a virus that destroyed all our programming." Sarah slumped into a chair, staring at the wreckage of their dreams. Who would do this? Who would want to sabotage a medical robot designed to save a child's life? Dr. Martinez was checking the computer systems. "Sarah, you need to see this." On her screen was an email that had arrived during the hack. "Your robot design belongs to the people who can actually use it to help patients now. not in some fantasy space mission. Consider this a warning. A friend of medical progress. Someone stole our research, Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. They destroyed our robot and took all our work. Elon's face was grim as he examined the damaged systems. This wasn't random. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. They understood our security, our programming, even our testing schedule. It had to be someone with inside knowledge, Marcus agreed. Someone who's been watching our work closely. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. After all their hard work, all their hope, someone had deliberately destroyed their chance to save Xavier. Can we rebuild it? Dr. Martinez asked. Sarah looked at the calendar on the wall. 8 days until launch. The robot was completely destroyed. Their programming was gone, and their security had been compromised. Not in time, she said. Even if we worked non-stop, we'd need at least 3 weeks to rebuild everything from scratch. Elon sat down heavily, his face in his hands. The mission will have to be canceled. I can't take Xavier to space without medical support. What about postponing? Dr. Kim suggested. Wait for the next launch window. Xavier's condition won't wait, Dr. Martinez said quietly. The doctors think he has maybe 2 more months before he'll need immediate surgery. The next launch window isn't for 4 months. Sarah felt tears stinging her eyes. They had been so close. Xavier had been so excited about seeing the Earth from space, about fulfilling his mother's dream. Now they would have to tell him that it was impossible. We can't give up, Sarah said suddenly. Sarah, be realistic, Elon replied. There's not enough time. Then we make time. We work smarter, not just harder. Sarah stood up and walked to the whiteboard. What if we don't rebuild the robot? What if we build something completely different? Like what? Marcus asked. Sarah began sketching rapidly. The hack destroyed our robot, but it didn't destroy our knowledge. We still know what Xavier needs. We still understand the medical challenges. What if we create a simpler system? Not a full surgical robot, but an emergency stabilization unit. Dr. Martinez frowned. That wouldn't be enough for complex surgery, but it would keep Xavier alive until we could send help, Sarah continued. A device that monitors his condition, delivers medication, and performs basic life support. Something so simple that it can't be hacked because it doesn't need complex programming. Elon looked up from his hands. You're talking about a medical life raft instead of a hospital. Exactly, we can't build a robot surgeon in 8 days. But we can build something that keeps one specific patient stable for a few hours until human help arrives. The team gathered around Sarah's sketches. The design was much simpler than their original robot. Basically a smart medical device that could respond to emergencies automatically. It could work, Dr. Kim said slowly. But it would be one-time use only. Once deployed, it couldn't be repaired or reprogrammed. That's okay, Sarah said. We're not trying to revolutionize space medicine anymore. We're just trying to keep Xavier safe for one mission. And if something goes wrong with this simpler device? Dr. Martinez asked. Sarah looked through the lab window at Xavier, who was napping in the observation room, unaware that his dreams had just been shattered and rebuilt in the span of an hour. Then we'll have tried everything we could, she said. But I'm not ready to tell that boy that he can't follow his mother's dream because someone else decided our work was too dangerous to succeed. Elon stood up and walked to the whiteboard. Show me exactly what you're thinking. For the next hour, Sarah outlined her plan. Instead of a complex robot, they would build a medical pod that could be installed in Xavier's spacesuit. It would monitor his vital signs, deliver emergency medication, and perform basic life support functions. If something went wrong, the pod would keep him alive long enough for the spacecraft to return to Earth. It's not perfect, Sarah admitted, but it's possible. And possible in 8 days. What about the security breach? Marcus asked. Whoever hacked us could do it again. Not if we were completely offline, Sarah replied. No internet connection, no wireless signals, no way for anyone to interfere. We build this device the old-fashioned way, with our hands and our brains, not computer networks. Elon studied the design for a long time. Finally, he looked up at Sarah. You really think we can do this? I think we have to try. Xavier is counting on us. And if we fail, Sarah looked at her team, engineers and doctors who had worked 18-hour days for weeks, who who had seen their dreams destroyed and were ready to build them again from scratch. Then we failed trying to do something impossible instead of giving up on something difficult. Elon smiled for the first time since the hack. I remember why I wanted to work with you 15 years ago. Because I'm too stubborn to know when to quit. Because you believe in keeping promises even when the whole world is against you. As the team began planning their desperate final push, Sarah realized that the hack might have actually helped them. The complex robot had been impressive, but this simpler device was exactly what Xavier needed. Not a machine trying to replace human doctors, but a guardian angel designed specifically to protect one brave boy on the adventure of his lifetime. 7 days to build a miracle. Sarah had faced impossible deadlines before, but never with stakes this high. Outside the lab windows, she could see the lunar spacecraft being prepared for launch. In 1 week, that rocket would either carry Xavier safely to the stars, or it would sit empty on the launch pad while a sick boy watched his dreams disappear. Sarah picked up her tools and got back to work. There was no time for doubt, no energy for fear. Only the promise she had made to a 12-year-old boy who believed that together they could do anything. The next 3 days blurred together in a constant stream of welding, programming, and testing. The team worked in shifts around the clock, building the medical life support pod piece by piece. They had disconnected all computers from the internet and posted security guards at every entrance to prevent another attack. Sarah's hands were covered with small cuts from handling metal parts, and her eyes burned from staring at tiny circuit boards. But the device was taking shape. A sleek silver pod about the size of a briefcase that could be attached to Xavier's spacesuit. "How's the heart monitor coming?" she asked Dr. Kim, who was working on the device's medical sensors. "Perfect. It will track Xavier's heart rhythm, blood pressure, and oxygen levels every second. If anything goes wrong, it will automatically inject the right medication to keep him stable." "And the communication system?" Sarah turned to Marcus, who was installing the pod's emergency beacon. "Simple but effective. If Xavier needs help, the pod sends a distress signal directly to the spacecraft. No complex programming that can be hacked, just a basic radio signal." Sarah nodded, checking items off her list. Everything was coming together, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. The hack had been too precise, too well-timed. Someone on the inside had to be feeding information to whoever wanted their project to fail. "Sarah, we need to talk." Elon appeared at her workstation, his face serious. "Can you come to my office?" Sarah followed him to a small room away from the main lab. Elon closed the door and activated a white noise machine to prevent anyone from listening to their conversation. "I found out who sabotaged us," he said quietly. Sarah's stomach dropped. "Who?" "Dr. Marcus Webb." The name hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. Marcus Webb, their old friend from Quantum Leap Technologies. The third member of their original team who had been there during those late nights eating Chinese food and dreaming about changing the world. "That's impossible," Sarah said. "Marcus left California years ago. He works for a medical device company in Boston now. Biotech Solutions. They've been trying to develop their own surgical robot for the military. When our project became public, they saw it as competition." Elon handed Sarah a tablet showing email records and financial transactions. The evidence was clear. Marcus had been paid substantial amounts of money to spy on their project and sabotage it at the critical moment. "He's been feeding them information for weeks," Elon continued. "Our security protocols, our testing schedules, even Xavier's medical records. The hack was his final act before they launched their own robot for military use." Sarah felt sick. Marcus had been like a brother to her during their startup days. He had celebrated their successes and comforted her when the company failed. To learn that he had deliberately tried to destroy their work and put Xavier's life at risk was almost unbearable. "Where is he now?" she asked. "Our security team found him trying to access the building this morning with fake credentials. He's in the conference room with 2 guards." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "I want to talk to him." "Sarah, I don't think that's a good idea. You're too emotionally invested. He betrayed our friendship. He tried to hurt Xavier. I need to understand why." Elon studied her face for a moment, then nodded. 5 minutes. That's all." The conference room felt cold and sterile. Marcus sat at the long table, looking older and more tired than Sarah remembered. His hair was gray now, and lines creased his face. When he saw Sarah enter, he couldn't meet her eyes. "Hello, Sarah. Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. Marcus finally looked up at her. "Because you two always thought you were special. Always thought your dreams were more important than everyone else's. We were trying to help people. You were trying to help rich people play in space while millions of patients suffer on Earth. Do you know how many people die every year because they can't afford medical robots? But instead of making technology available to everyone, you're building toys for billionaires." Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. Xavier isn't a billionaire. He's a sick child who just wants to see the stars. One child. While thousands of others die because the technology that could save them is locked away in space projects and military contracts. "So, you stole our research to give it to a military contractor?" Marcus's face flushed red. "Biotech Solutions will mass-produce surgical robots for hospitals around the world. Your technology could save hundreds of thousands of lives if it wasn't wasted on space fantasies. By sabotaging our work, you put Xavier's life in danger. One life versus hundreds of thousands. The math is simple, Sarah." Sarah stared at her old friend, trying to understand how someone she had once trusted could justify endangering a child. The Marcus I knew 15 years ago would never have hurt an innocent boy to prove a point. The Marcus you knew 15 years ago was naive. I believed in your dreams then, but dreams don't save lives. Real technology in real hospitals does. Our dreams became real technology. Elon has launched rockets, built electric cars, changed entire industries. This medical robot could revolutionize space medicine and help millions of future colonists. Future colonists who will all be wealthy enough to buy tickets to space. Meanwhile, people are dying today because they can't afford basic medical care. Sarah felt her anger turning to sadness. Marcus wasn't wrong about the inequality in medical care, but he was wrong about their solution. "You could have talked to us," she said. "You could have asked to be part of the project to help make sure the technology would be shared widely. Instead, you chose betrayal." Marcus looked down at his hands. "Would you have listened? Or would you have been too busy chasing your space dreams to care about problems here on Earth?" Sarah thought about Xavier, about his excitement over going to the moon, about his mother's unfulfilled dream of seeing Earth from space. Then she thought about all the children in hospitals who couldn't afford the medical care they needed. "I don't know," she admitted, "but we'll never find out now. Will we?" The door opened, and Elon entered with the security guards. "Time's up." As the guards escorted Marcus out, he turned back to Sarah one last time. "I hope your space boy survives," he said. "But I also hope you remember that for every child you save in space, there are thousands more you could save right here on Earth." After he was gone, Sarah sat alone in the conference room, Marcus's words echoing in her mind. Was she being selfish? Focusing on one boy's dream while ignoring the suffering of so many others? Elon returned and sat across from her. "Don't let him get in your head, Sarah. What we're doing matters." "Does it?" "Maybe Marcus is right. Maybe we should be building robots for hospitals instead of space missions. Who says we can't do both?" Elon leaned forward. "This isn't the end of our medical robot program. It's the beginning. Once we prove the technology works in space, we can adapt it for use in remote areas on Earth. Rural hospitals, disaster zones, anywhere doctors can't be physically present." Sarah looked up at him. "You really think we can scale this up?" "I think we can keep our promise to change the world. Starting with keeping one brave boy safe, and then expanding to help everyone who needs it." Through the conference room window, Sarah could see into the lab where her team was still working frantically on Xavier's life support pod. In 4 days, that device would either keep a child alive in space or fail at the most critical moment. But win or lose, they would have tried something that had never been attempted before. They would have pushed the boundaries of what was possible, just like they had promised each other 15 years ago. "We should get back to work," Sarah said, standing up. "Sarah?" "Yes?" Marcus was wrong about one thing. This isn't about rich people playing in space. This is about proving that human beings can survive anywhere in the universe, and that knowledge will help everyone, not just the wealthy. Sarah nodded, feeling her determination return. Marcus had tried to destroy their work out of jealousy and misguided principles, but he had failed to understand the bigger picture. that breakthrough technologies often start with small, expensive projects before becoming widely available. The first computers had filled entire rooms and cost millions of dollars. Now everyone carried one in their pocket. The first cars were toys for the rich. Now they transported billions of people every day. This medical robot would follow the same path. It would start by keeping one boy safe on the moon. But eventually it would save lives in hospitals and clinics around the world. As Sarah returned to the lab and picked up her tools, she realized that Marcus's betrayal had actually strengthened her resolve. She wasn't just building a device to save Xavier anymore. She was building the foundation for a medical revolution that would help people everywhere. 4 days until launch. 4 days to prove that dreams backed by determination could overcome any obstacle, even betrayal by old friends. Sarah looked at Xavier, who was napping peacefully in his wheelchair while the device that might save his life took shape around him. The boy had taught them that the best technology came from love, not anger, from hope, not fear. It was a lesson Marcus had forgotten, but one that Sarah would carry with her as they raced toward their date with the stars. 3 days until launch. Sarah hadn't slept in 36 hours, but her hands remained steady as she calibrated the final sensors on Xavier's life support pod. The device was beautiful in its simplicity. Smooth silver metal with soft blue lights that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. "How are you feeling today?" she asked Xavier, who was sitting in his wheelchair beside her workstation. "Tired, but excited," he replied, though Sarah could see the exhaustion in his young face. His condition was getting worse each day. Yesterday, he had needed oxygen twice during their testing sessions. Dr. Martinez had been monitoring Xavier closely, and her reports were concerning. "His heart is working harder to pump blood," she had told Sarah privately. "We're running out of time faster than we expected." Sarah pushed those worries aside and focused on the pod's final systems check. "Want to help me test the emergency alert system one more time?" Xavier nodded eagerly. Despite his illness, he loved being part of the team. Sarah handed him a SAL button connected to the pod. "Remember, if you ever feel scared or sick while wearing this, just press the button. The pod will automatically send a signal to your dad and start giving you medicine to help you feel better." Xavier pressed the button, and immediately the pod's lights changed from blue to yellow. A gentle alarm sounded, and the device's display showed all of Xavier's vital signs, even though he wasn't connected to it yet. "Cool," Xavier said. "It's like having a robot doctor that fits in my backpack." "Exactly like that," Sarah smiled. "And this robot doctor has one job, keeping you safe so you can see the Earth from space. Just like Mom wanted," Xavier said softly. Sarah's heart ached for this brave boy who carried such a heavy burden. Not only was he fighting a serious illness, but he was also trying to fulfill his mother's dream of seeing the planet from space. "Tell me about your mom," Sarah said as she made final adjustments to the pod. Xavier's eyes lit up. "She was brilliant. Dad says I got my engineering brain from her. She designed artificial hearts that saved hundreds of people. But she always wanted to see how the heart worked in zero gravity. That's a beautiful dream. She told me that from space you can see that the Earth doesn't have any borders. No countries, no walls, just one big blue and green ball with all of us living on it together. She wanted to study how that perspective might help doctors work together to help more people." Sarah stopped working and looked at Xavier. His mother's vision was exactly what she and Elon had talked about 15 years ago, using space exploration to bring humanity together and solve problems that seemed impossible on Earth. "Your mom sounds like she would have been a good friend of mine," Sarah said. "She would have loved this project. Dad showed me her old journals, and she wrote about robotic doctors that could work anywhere in the solar system. She said that if humans were going to live on other planets, we needed to bring our compassion with us. Not just our technology. Compassion." The word hit Sarah like a lightning bolt. That's what had been missing from their original robot design. Not just technical capability, but the ability to care for patients the way a loving parent would care for a sick child. "Xavier, you just gave me an idea," Sarah said, grabbing her tablet. "What if the pod doesn't just monitor your medical condition? What if it also pays attention to how you're feeling emotionally?" "You mean like if I get scared?" "Exactly. Space can be frightening, even for brave people like you. What if the pod could detect when you're anxious or worried and respond by playing your favorite music or showing pictures of your family?" Xavier's eyes widened. "That would be amazing. Sometimes when I'm in the hospital, I get scared even when the doctors say everything is fine. It would be nice to have something that understood how I was feeling. Sarah was already typing code into her tablet. Emotional monitoring and response. Why didn't we think of this before? Because you were thinking like engineers instead of like parents, came a voice from behind them. Sarah turned to see Elon approaching, carrying 2 cups of coffee and looking more exhausted than she had ever seen him. I heard what Xavier said about his mom's journals. Elon continued, handing Sarah a coffee. She always told me that the best medical technology wasn't just about fixing bodies, it was about healing hearts and minds too. Can we add emotional support features to the pod in 3 days? Sarah asked. We have to, Elon said. Xavier, would you help us program what the pod should do when someone feels scared or lonely? For the next 12 hours, Xavier worked with the team to design the pod's emotional support system. They programmed it to recognize signs of fear, anxiety, and sadness through changes in heart rate, breathing, and movement patterns. When the pod detected emotional distress, it would respond in ways Xavier had chosen, playing recordings of his father's voice, displaying photos of his favorite memories, or even telling jokes that made him laugh. It's like having a best friend that's also a doctor, Xavier said as they tested the system. But as they worked, Sarah noticed Xavier was getting weaker. He needed help moving from his wheelchair to the testing chair, and his breathing was more labored than before. Dr. Martinez pulled Sarah aside during a break. We need to talk. They went to a quiet corner of the lab where Xavier couldn't hear them. His condition deteriorated significantly overnight, Dr. Martinez said quietly. His heart is struggling more than we expected. I'm not sure he'll be strong enough for the spaceflight in 3 days. Sarah felt the world spinning around her. What are you saying? I'm saying we might need to postpone the mission. Xavier's health has to come first. But the next launch window isn't for 4 months. You said yourself he might not have that long. I know. But if his condition gets worse during the flight, even our pod might not be enough to save him. Sarah looked across the lab at Xavier, who was excitedly explaining something to one of the engineers. The boy had no idea that his dream might be slipping away. What does Elon think? She asked. He's torn. As a father, he wants to keep Xavier safe. As an engineer, he knows this might be Xavier's only chance to fulfill his mother's dream. Sarah made a decision. Give me 2 more days to finish the pod. If Xavier gets worse, we'll postpone. But if he stays stable, we go. Dr. Martinez nodded reluctantly. 2 days. But if his condition changes at all, the mission is canceled. That night, Sarah worked alone in the lab while Xavier slept in the medical observation room. She fine-tuned every circuit, tested every system, and double-checked every line of code. The pod was more than a medical device now. It was a promise. A promise to Xavier that he would see the Earth from space. A promise to his mother that her dream would live on. A promise to herself and Elon that their 15-year-old vision of helping humanity reach the stars would finally come true. At 3 a.m., Elon found her still working. You should get some sleep, he said gently. I can't. What if there's something I missed? What if the pod fails when Xavier needs it most? Elon sat down beside her. Do you remember what you told me 15 years ago, the night before our company failed? Sarah shook her head. You said that sometimes the best technology isn't the most complex or the most perfect. Sometimes the best technology is the one built with love. Sarah looked at the pod, with its gentle blue lights and simple, elegant design. Every component had been chosen not just for technical excellence, but for Xavier's comfort and safety. His pod isn't just a machine, Elon continued. It's our love for Xavier made real. It's our promise to his mother, our commitment to the future, and our friendship rebuilt stronger than before. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. What if it's not enough? Then we'll know we tried everything. But Sarah, I believe this will work. Not because the technology is perfect, but because it was built by people who care more about one sick boy than about being right or being famous. The next morning brought news that made Sarah's heart sing. Xavier had slept peacefully all night, and his vital signs were stable. Dr. Martinez cautiously agreed that he was strong enough for the mission. 1 more day, she told Sarah. If he stays stable for 1 more day, we go to the moon. Sarah looked at the completed pod sitting on the testing table. It was small enough to fit in a backpack, light enough for Xavier to carry easily, and smart enough to keep him alive in the most dangerous environment humans had ever explored. But more than that, It was a bridge between past and future, between dreams and reality, between a sick boy on Earth and the infinite possibilities waiting among the stars. Tomorrow, they would find out if 15 years of separated dreams could come together to work a miracle. Launch day arrived with gray clouds hanging over the SpaceX facility. Sarah woke up at 5 a.m. in her Seoul apartment, her stomach churning with nervousness. Today, everything they had worked for would be put to the ultimate test. She arrived at the medical facility to find Xavier already awake, sitting up in his hospital bed with excitement shining in his eyes despite his pale complexion. "Today's the day," he said as soon as he saw Sarah. "I'm really gonna space. How are you feeling?" Sarah asked, checking the monitors beside his bed. "A little tired, but ready for the adventure. Dr. Martinez says my heart looks good this morning." Sarah nodded, though she could see the concern in Dr. Martinez's eyes. Xavier's vital signs were stable, but just barely. The boy was running on pure excitement and determination. "Let's get your special backpack ready," Sarah said, referring to the life support pod they had disguised to look like a regular spacesuit accessory. As Sarah helped Xavier put on the pod sensors, Elon appeared in the doorway. His face was drawn with worry, but he managed to smile for his son. "Ready to see the Earth from Mom's perspective?" Elon asked. "More ready than I've ever been for anything," Xavier replied. But as they prepared to leave for the launch pad, Dr. Martinez pulled Sarah and Elon aside. "We have a problem," she said quietly. "Xavier's blood work from this morning shows some concerning changes. His condition is progressing faster than we anticipated." Sarah felt her heart skip. How much faster? Instead of having weeks before he needs surgery, he might need it within days, maybe less. Elon ran his hand through his hair, the same nervous gesture Sarah remembered from 15 years ago. "Are you saying we should abort the mission?" "I'm saying that if Xavier needs emergency surgery while you're on the moon, the window for saving him will be very small. The pod will need to work perfectly the first time, with no room for error." Sarah looked through the window at Xavier, who was excitedly talking to one of the nurses about what he would see in space. The boy had no idea how much danger he was in. "There's something else," Dr. Martinez continued. "Something I think you both need to know before you make the final decision." She led them to her office and closed the door. Xavier's condition isn't just genetic. It's the same condition that his mother died from. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. The same. Identical. And Xavier knows. He's known for months that he has the same illness that took his mother. That's part of why this trip means so much to him. He wants to see what she never got to see before. "Before it's too late," Elon finished, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah understood now why Xavier was so determined to go to space. Why he was so brave about the risks. This wasn't just about fulfilling his mother's dream. It was about living fully, while he still could. "How long does he have?" Sarah asked. "With the surgery, possibly years of good quality life. Without it," Dr. Martinez paused. "Maybe months." Elon sat down heavily in a chair. "He never told me he knew. He didn't want you to worry more than you already do. He said his job was to live his dreams, and your job was to help him achieve them." Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Xavier wasn't just a sick boy going on an adventure. He was a young man facing his mortality with incredible courage. "We have to go," Sarah said suddenly. Elon looked up at her. "Sarah, if something goes wrong, if we don't go, Xavier loses his chance to see what his mother dreamed of seeing. If we do go, at least he'll have that experience, no matter what happens next. And if the pod fails?" Sarah thought about all the long nights, all the testing, all the love and care they had put into building Xavier's life support system. "It won't fail. I won't let it." 2 hours later, Sarah stood on the observation deck watching Elon and Xavier board their spacecraft. The rocket was beautiful, sleek and white, reaching toward the cloudy sky like a giant's arrow. Xavier waved at her through the spacecraft window, his face glowing with joy despite the oxygen mask he now needed to wear. The life support pod was integrated seamlessly into his spacesuit, monitoring his every heartbeat. As the countdown began, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. 15 years ago, she and Elon had promised to help humanity reach the stars. Today, that promise was being kept in the most personal way possible. "T-30 seconds," announced the launch director. Sarah closed her eyes and made her own promise. To Xavier, to his mother's memory, and to the future of space medicine. This pod would work. This boy would see the Earth from space. And he would come home safely. T-10, 9. Sarah opened her eyes and watched as fire erupted from the rocket's engines. 7, 6, 5. The spacecraft began to rise, slowly at first, then faster. 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff. The rocket climbed into the gray sky, carrying Elon and Xavier toward the moon. Sarah watched until it disappeared into the clouds, then rushed to mission control to monitor Xavier's vital signs during the journey. For 3 days, everything went perfectly. Xavier's condition remained stable, and his excitement was infectious. He sent video messages showing the Earth getting smaller below them, his face filled with wonder. "Sarah, you have to see this," he said in one transmission. "Mom was right. From up here, you can't see any borders. It's just one beautiful blue world with all of us living on it together." But on the 4th day, as their spacecraft approached the moon, Sarah's worst fears came true. Medical emergency in the spacecraft, came the urgent voice from mission control. Xavier is experiencing cardiac distress. Activating emergency protocols. Sarah's hands flew across her control panel, monitoring Xavier's vital signs through the pod's sensors. His heart rate was dangerously irregular, and his blood pressure was dropping. "Elon, talk to me," Sarah said into her headset. "He collapsed about 10 minutes ago." Elon's voice came back, tight with fear. He was looking out the window at the moon, saying how beautiful it was. And then "The pod is already responding," Sarah said, watching her computer screen. "It's detected the cardiac episode and is administering the emergency medication we programmed for this situation." For the next hour, Sarah watched Xavier's vital signs fluctuate wildly, while the life support pod fought to keep him stable. This was the moment they had prepared for, a medical emergency millions of miles from Earth, with only their small silver device standing between a sick boy and disaster. "His heart rhythm is stabilizing," Dr. Martinez reported from beside Sarah. "The medication is working. But for how long?" Sarah asked. "Long enough to get him to the moon-based medical facility. Once he's in the low-gravity environment, his heart won't have to work as hard." The next 6 hours were the longest of Sarah's life. She stayed connected to Xavier through the pod's combination system, monitoring every heartbeat, every breath, every sign of improvement or decline. Finally, Elon's voice came through the speakers. "We've landed. Xavier is conscious and asking if he can see the Earth from the moon base observation window." Sarah laughed through her tears. Even after a cardiac emergency, Xavier was still focused on fulfilling his mother's dream. "Pod status report," she requested. "All systems green," Elon replied. The device performed flawlessly. "Sarah, you saved his life." "We all did," Sarah said. "Now let him see what his mother wanted him to see." 20 minutes later, a video transmission arrived from the moon. It showed Xavier, weak but smiling, looking out a large window at the Earth, hanging in the black sky like a blue and white marble. "It's exactly like Mom described," he said softly. "One world, no borders, just home." Sarah realized she was witnessing something historic, not just the successful test of revolutionary medical technology, but the fulfillment of a promise that spanned generations. Xavier's mother had dreamed of seeing Earth from space. Xavier had made that dream real, despite facing the same illness that had taken her life. "Thank you, Sarah," Xavier continued in the transmission. "Thank you for keeping me safe so I could see this. Now I understand why Mom wanted to come here so badly." "What do you see?" Sarah asked. "Hope," Xavier replied. "I see hope for everyone down there. If we can build machines that keep people alive on the moon, we can build machines that help people anywhere." Mom was right. Space isn't about leaving Earth behind. It's about learning how to take care of each other no matter where we go. As Sarah watched Xavier gaze at Earth from his hospital bed on the moon, she realized that their project had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They hadn't just built a medical device. They had proven that human compassion could reach across the void of space itself. The pod continued monitoring Xavier's condition, keeping him stable while the moon's low gravity helped his heart recover. In a few days, when he was stronger, they would begin the journey home. But for now, a sick boy was living his mother's dream. supported by technology built with 15 years of separated friendship finally reunited in love. For 2 days, Xavier rested in the moon base medical facility while his heart grew stronger in the low-gravity environment. Sarah monitored his progress from Earth, watching his vital signs improve hour by hour through the pod's constant data stream. His recovery is remarkable, Dr. Martinez observed, studying the medical readings. The reduced gravity is helping his heart pump blood more easily. His stress levels are down, and his overall condition has actually improved since leaving Earth. Sarah smiled as she watched the latest video transmission from Xavier. He was sitting up in his moon-base bed, excitedly describing the view of Earth through his window to the mission team. "You can see the whole Pacific Ocean from here," he said, his face brighter than it had been in weeks. "And at night, you can see all the cities lit up like tiny stars. It's like looking at a giant Christmas tree floating in space." But Sarah's joy was tempered by the medical reports. While Xavier was feeling better temporarily, his underlying condition was still progressing. The surgery he needed couldn't be delayed much longer. "Dr. Chen," came Elon's voice through the communication system. "We need to talk." Sarah put on her headset for a private conversation with Elon, while Xavier napped. "How is he really doing?" "Better than expected, but the moon-based doctors have been running tests. They think we need to make a decision soon about the surgery." "On the moon?" "Here's the thing, Sarah. The low-gravity environment makes the surgery much safer than it would be on Earth. But it also means using our pod in ways we never fully tested." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" "The surgery Xavier needs is more complex than we originally planned for. The doctors here think the pod could handle it, but it would require reprogramming some of its functions remotely from Earth." "Remotely?" Sarah's mind raced through the implications. "Elon, we designed pod to work independently precisely because remote control isn't reliable across space distances." "I know. But the alternative is bringing Xavier back to Earth for surgery, and the doctors aren't sure he's strong enough for another space flight right now." Sarah stared at her computer screen, watching Xavier's vital signs pulse steadily across the monitor. The pod had saved his life during the emergency, but using it for actual surgery was a completely different challenge. "What does Xavier want to do?" she asked. "He wants to have the surgery here. He says if something goes wrong, at least he'll be in the place his mother always dreamed of visiting." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision. They had built the pod to keep Xavier stable during emergencies, not to perform the complex heart surgery he actually needed. "Give me 12 hours, she said finally. "I need to run some simulations and see if we can safely modify the pod's programming for surgery." "Sarah, you don't have to do this. We can bring him home and—" "No," Sarah interrupted. "We promised Xavier he could fulfill his mother's dream. That doesn't mean just seeing Earth from space. It means having the chance to live the life his mother wanted for him. If the surgery has a better chance of success on the moon, then that's where it should happen." For the next 10 hours, Sarah worked with a team of programmers and doctors to design new protocols for the pod. They ran hundreds of computer simulations, testing every possible scenario. The challenge was enormous. The pod would need to guide robotic surgical instruments with perfect precision while communicating across 40,000 miles of space. Any delay, any miscommunication, any technical glitch could be fatal. "The communication lag is our biggest problem," explained Dr. Kim. "It takes 1.3 seconds for signals to travel from Earth to the moon. In surgery, 1.3 seconds can mean the difference between life and death." "What if we don't try to control the surgery from Earth?" Sarah suggested. "What if we program the pod with very specific instructions for Xavier's exact procedure, then let it work independently?" The team looked at her with uncertainty. "Sarah, that's essentially letting an artificial intelligence perform surgery with no human oversight," Dr. Martinez said. "Not no oversight, just delayed oversight. We monitor everything that happens, and if something goes wrong, we can send new instructions. But for the critical moments, the pod makes its own decisions based on Xavier's specific medical needs." It was the most dangerous thing Sarah had ever proposed. They would be trusting Xavier's life to a machine that had never performed surgery before, operating in an environment where help was impossibly far away. But as Sarah studied the simulations, she began to see something remarkable. The pod's emotional monitoring system, the feature Xavier had inspired them to add, could actually help guide the surgery by tracking Xavier's stress levels, heart rate, and other emotional indicators The pod could adjust its approach in real time. It's not just performing surgery, Sarah realized. It's caring for him the way a parent would care for a sick child. The next morning, Sarah presented her plan to the mission team. The pod would be reprogrammed with detailed instructions for Xavier's specific surgery. It would work independently during the critical phases, but send constant updates to Earth so doctors could provide guidance when needed. The success rate in our simulations is 94%, Sarah reported. That's actually higher than the same surgery would have on Earth, because the low gravity reduces stress on Xavier's heart, and the 6% failure rate. Dr. Martinez asked. Sarah took a deep breath. Those are scenarios where something goes catastrophically wrong. Power failure, communication breakdown, or complications we haven't anticipated. In those cases, she didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone understood the risks. What does Xavier think? Asked the mission director. Sarah pulled up the latest video message from the moon. Xavier appeared on screen, looking directly at the camera with determination that reminded everyone of his father. I know you're all worried about the surgery, Xavier said, but I'm not scared. Sarah built something amazing to take care of me. And even if something goes wrong, I got to see what Mom wanted to see. I got to understand that we're all connected, even across the emptiness of space. He paused, looking out his window at Earth. Mom used to tell me that the best doctors aren't the ones who never lose patience. They're the ones who try everything they can to help people live their dreams. That's what you're all doing for me. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as Xavier continued. Besides, if the surgery works, I'll be the first person ever to have their heart fixed on the moon. That's pretty cool, right? The mission director looked around the room at the team of engineers, doctors, and scientists who had worked so hard to reach this moment. All in favor of proceeding with the lunar surgery? Every hand in the room went up. Motion carried. Dr. Chen, please transmit the surgical protocols to the moon base. We're going to make medical history. As Sarah began uploading the new programming to Xavier's pod, she realized they were about to attempt something that seemed impossible just months ago. A boy who shared his mother's rare heart condition would receive surgery on the moon, performed by a robot that had learned to combine medical precision with human compassion. If it worked, they would prove that humanity could carry its capacity for healing anywhere in the universe. If it failed, Sarah pushed that thought away and focused on her computer screen. The upload was at 67% complete. Soon, Xavier's life would depend entirely on the technology she and Elon had built from their 15-year-old dream and their love for one brave boy. Upload complete, she announced. The pod is ready. Through the speakers, they heard Elon's voice from the moon. Xavier's ready too. He says to tell Sarah that he believes in the robot she built, because she built it with love. Sarah looked at the mission clock. In 6 hours, they would find out if love could really overcome the impossible distance between Earth and the stars. The waiting was the hardest part. Sarah paced around mission control, checking and rechecking every system while the clock ticked down towards surgery time. The life support pod was ready, the surgical protocols were uploaded, and Xavier was as prepared as a 12-year-old boy could be for heart surgery on the moon. Try to eat something, Dr. Martinez suggested, offering Sarah a sandwich. You'll need your strength for the next few hours. Sarah shook her head. I can't. My stomach feels like it's full of butterflies. Xavier seems calmer than any of us, observed Dr. Kim, watching the video feed from the moon base. On the screen, Xavier was talking quietly with his father while moon base medical staff prepared the surgical suite. The boy looked small in his hospital bed, but his voice was steady and strong. Dad, I want you to know something, Xavier said. Even if the surgery doesn't work, this has been the best adventure of my life. I got to see what Mom dreamed of seeing, and I got to help Sarah and you build something that will help other kids someday. Elon's voice was thick with emotion as he replied, You're the bravest person I know, Xavier. Your mom would be so proud of you. She would be proud of all of us. We kept our promise to help people reach the stars safely. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she listened to their conversation. This boy who was facing the most dangerous surgery ever attempted was still thinking about helping others. T-2 hours until surgery, announced the mission director. Sarah sat down at her control station and put on her headset. For the next several hours, she would be Xavier's lifeline, monitoring his condition through the pod and guiding the surgical process from Pod status check, she called to the moon base. All systems green, came the reply from the moon base medical team. Pod is fully integrated with our surgical equipment and responding perfectly to commands. Xavier's vital signs? Heart rate slightly elevated due to pre-surgery nerves. But all other indicators are stable. He's ready when you are. Sarah took a deep breath and looked around mission control. Every person in the room had played a part in reaching this moment. Engineers, doctors, programmers, and support staff who had worked impossible hours to make the impossible possible. This is it, she said into her headset. Xavier, can you hear me? Hi, Sarah, came Xavier's cheerful voice through the speakers. I'm wearing the special sensors now, and the pod is humming quietly beside my bed. It sounds like it's singing a lullaby. Sarah smiled, despite her nervousness. They had programmed the pod to make gentle, rhythmic sounds during stressful procedures to help keep patients calm. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. Remember, the pod is going to take very good care of you. All you have to do is rest and let it work. I will. Sarah? Yes. Thank you for believing in our dreams. Thank you for coming back to help Dad. And thank you for building something that feels like a hug from a robot. Sarah's hands trembled as she adjusted her controls. You're welcome, sweetie. Now let's get your heart fixed so you can have many more adventures. T-minus 30 minutes, announced the mission director. The moon-based surgical suite was unlike anything ever attempted before. The pod sat beside Xavier's operating table, its silver surface gleaming under the medical lights. Robotic surgical arms extended from the pod, each one calibrated to work in the moon's low-gravity environment. Dr. Harrison, the moon-based chief surgeon, would oversee the procedure while the pod performed the actual operation. It was a strange partnership, human wisdom guiding artificial precision across the void of space. Beginning pre-surgical prep, Dr. Harrison announced. Patient is stable and ready for anesthesia. Pod, initiate emotional monitoring protocol, Sarah commanded from Earth. Immediately, her screen filled with data about Xavier's emotional state. The pod detected mild anxiety, which was normal before surgery, but also something else: excitement. Even facing major surgery, Xavier was still thrilled to be part of this historic moment. Anesthesia administered. Patient is unconscious and stable. Pod, begin surgical sequence. Sarah watched her monitors as the pod came to life. The robotic arms moved with incredible precision, guided by the artificial intelligence they had programmed with thousands of hours of surgical data. But more than that, the pod was responding to Xavier's unique medical needs and emotional patterns. Initial incision complete. Accessing cardiac area. For the first hour, everything went perfectly. The pod's movements were smooth and precise, and Xavier's vital signs remained stable. Sarah felt her confidence growing as she watched the surgery progress exactly as they had simulated. Then disaster struck. We have a problem. Dr. Harrison's voice came through the speakers, tense with concern. There's an unexpected complication. The patient's heart anatomy is slightly different than our scans showed. The pod is encountering tissue that wasn't in the surgical plan. Sarah's blood ran cold. They had planned for many contingencies, but anatomical variations were nearly impossible to predict. The pod was programmed for Xavier's specific case, but what if his actual anatomy didn't match the medical scans? Pod status? Sarah asked, her fingers flying across her keyboard. The pod has stopped the procedure and is requesting guidance, Dr. Harrison reported. It's detected the anomaly and gone into safety mode. This was the nightmare scenario they had all feared. The pod was designed to handle unexpected situations, but only up to a point. If the surgical plan no longer matched Xavier's actual anatomy, the pod might not be able to complete the operation. Time is critical, Dr. Harrison continued. We can't leave the patient in this condition for long. Sarah stared at her screens, her mind racing. They had 1.3 seconds of communication delay between Earth and Moon. Any instructions she sent would arrive too late for split-second surgical decisions. But then she remembered something Xavier had said weeks ago. The robot tried to think of everything at once, but maybe it just needs to remember one thing: that my dad loves me and wants to help me feel better. Pod, access adaptive learning protocol, Sarah commanded. Sarah, what are you doing? Dr. Martinez asked. We didn't program an adaptive learning protocol. Yes, we did. We programmed it to learn from Xavier's emotional responses and adjust accordingly. Sarah's hands moved rapidly across her controls. Pod. Analyze patient's stress indicators and cardiac response patterns. Adapt surgical approach based on real-time biological feedback. On her screen, Sarah watched as the pod's artificial intelligence began processing Xavier's actual heart patterns instead of relying solely on the pre-surgical scans. The pod was learning Xavier's unique anatomy by feeling how his heart responded to each movement, each touch. Incredible, whispered Dr. Harrison. The pod is adjusting its approach based on the patient's actual physiology. It's like watching the robot learn surgery in real time. The pod resumed the operation, but now its movements were different. More tentative, more responsive. Instead of following a rigid surgical plan, it was adapting to Xavier's individual needs moment by moment. Heart rate stabilizing, reported the Moon-based medical team. The pod's new approach is working. For another 2 hours, Sarah watched the most remarkable surgery in human history unfold on her screens. The pod didn't just perform the operation. It learned to understand Xavier's unique heart, adjusting its technique based on how his body responded. The emotional monitoring system proved crucial. When Xavier's subconscious stress levels rose, the pod would pause and administer calming medication. When his heart rhythm fluctuated, the pod would adjust its pressure and timing accordingly. It was exactly what Xavier had envisioned, a robot that didn't just follow instructions, but actually cared about its patient. Final sutures complete, Dr. Harrison announced. Surgery is finished. Patient's vital signs are excellent. Sarah slumped back in her chair, emotionally exhausted. They had done it. Xavier had survived the most complex surgery ever performed, guided by a machine that had learned to combine artificial intelligence with human compassion. Pod, initiate post-surgical monitoring, Sarah commanded. Roger. Patient recovery protocol activated. All systems functioning normally. 20 minutes later, Xavier began to wake up. His first words, transmitted across space to mission control, made everyone in the room smile. Did it work? Can I have more adventures now? Yes, sweetie, Sarah said through her tears. You can have all the adventures you want. As Xavier recovered in his moon base hospital bed, Sarah realized they had accomplished something far greater than just saving one boy's life. They had proven that human love and ingenuity could overcome any obstacle, even the vast emptiness of space. The pod continued its vigilant watch over Xavier, monitoring his recovery with the same caring attention it had shown during surgery. It had become more than a medical device. It was a guardian angel that would ensure Xavier could live the full, adventurous life his mother had dreamed for him. Mission control to Moonbase, Sarah said into her headset. How's our patient doing? Asking when he can go outside and bounce around in the low gravity. Elon replied, laughter in his voice. I think he's going to be just fine. Sarah looked around mission control at all the people who had made this miracle possible. They had started with a simple promise between friends and ended with technology that would change space medicine forever. But more importantly, they had kept their word to a brave boy who believed that love could build bridges across the stars themselves. 3 days after Xavier's surgery, Sarah sat in mission control watching the most remarkable recovery she had ever witnessed. On her screen, Xavier was literally bouncing around his moon base hospital room, testing how high he could jump in the low gravity. Look, Sarah, he called out during their morning video call. I can jump almost to the ceiling, and my heart feels stronger than it has in months. Dr. Harrison, the moon base surgeon, appeared on screen with a huge smile. His recovery is unprecedented. The low-gravity environment combined with the pod's continued monitoring has accelerated his healing beyond our best projections. When can they come home? Dr. Martinez asked from beside Sarah. That's what we need to discuss, Dr. Harrison replied. Xavier's heart is functioning perfectly now, but we've discovered something unexpected. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. What kind of unexpected? The pod's adaptive learning during surgery didn't just fix Xavier's heart. It appears to have learned something important about his genetic condition. The AI is detecting cellular changes that suggest his body is actually healing at the genetic level. Sarah stared at the screen in disbelief. That's impossible. Genetic conditions can't be cured by surgery. Not by traditional surgery, Dr. Harrison agreed. But your pod did something no human surgeon could do. It worked at the cellular level while monitoring Xavier's emotional and stress responses. The combination seems to have triggered some kind of healing response we've never seen before. Elon's voice came through the communication system from the moon base. Sarah, I think you need to see the medical data. For the next hour, Sarah reviewed the most extraordinary medical files she had ever encountered. The pod's microscopic cardiac work, guided by Xavier's emotional responses, had somehow encouraged his body to begin repairing the genetic defect that caused his heart condition. It's like the pod taught his cells how to fix themselves, Dr. Kim observed, studying the genetic analysis. How is that possible? Sarah asked. We think it's because of the emotional monitoring system, Dr. Harrison explained. When the pod detected Xavier's stress and fear, it responded not just medically, but emotionally. It created an environment where his body felt safe to heal at the deepest level. Sarah remembered Xavier's insight weeks ago about the robot needing to care about patients, not just treat them. Without knowing it, they had built something that could facilitate healing through compassion as much as precision. What does this mean for Xavier's long-term health? Sarah asked. If the genetic repair continues at this rate, he won't just recover from this condition, he'll be completely cured of the genetic defect that caused it. He could live a completely normal life. Sarah felt tears of joy streaming down her face. Xavier wouldn't just survive. He would thrive. The boy who had faced his mother's fatal condition with such courage would be freed from that burden entirely. There's more, Dr. Harrison continued. The pod recorded everything it learned during Xavier's surgery and recovery. This data could help us treat other children with similar genetic conditions. We mean your technology didn't just save one boy's life. It may have found a cure for a genetic condition that affects thousands of children worldwide. Sarah looked around Mission Control at her team, who were all staring at the screens in amazement. They had started this project hoping to build a medical robot for space missions. Instead, they had accidentally discovered a new form of genetic therapy. Sarah, there's something else you need to know, came Elon's voice from the moon. More surprises? The space agencies have been watching our mission closely. NASA, the European Space Agency, the Chinese National Space Administration, they all want to work with us to develop this technology further. Sarah's head was spinning. What are they proposing? A permanent medical research station on the moon. The low-gravity environment combined with your pod technology could revolutionize how we treat genetic diseases. They want to establish what they're calling Quantum Leap Medical Center. Sarah's breath caught. Their old company name, the dream that had failed 15 years ago, would become the foundation for a medical revolution. But there's a choice to make, Elon continued. Xavier is strong enough to come home now, if we want. Or we could stay longer and help establish the research center. The decision is up to him. Sarah switched to Xavier's private communication channel. Hey sweetie, how are you feeling about all these big decisions? Xavier appeared on her screen, sitting by his hospital window with Earth hanging in the black sky behind him. I feel amazing, Sarah. Really amazing. But I also feel responsible. Responsible for what? For other kids who have the same thing I had. The doctors say the pod learned how to help genetic conditions by watching how my body responded. If staying here longer could help other sick children, Sarah's heart swelled with pride for this remarkable boy. Even after everything he had been through, Xavier was still thinking about helping others. What do you want to do? Sarah asked. I want to stay and help build the medical center. Mom always said that when you receive a miracle, you have a responsibility to share it with others. And your dad agrees? Dad says it's my choice. And I choose to help make sure other kids can get the same miracle I got. Sarah looked at the mission director, who had been listening to the conversation. What kind of timeline are we talking about? 6 more months on the moon to establish the basic research facility. The director replied. Xavier would be the first long-term pediatric patient in a lunar medical environment. The data from his continued recovery could help us understand exactly how the low gravity and pod technology work together. Sarah thought about her quiet life in Austin, her small research lab, her comfortable routines. 6 months ago, that life had seemed perfect. Now it felt impossibly small compared to the opportunity to change medicine forever. I'll need to relocate my entire research operation to Mission Control, Sarah said, and expand my team significantly. Already approved. The mission director smiled. The funding is being provided jointly by all major space agencies. You'll have unlimited resources and the best medical research team ever assembled. Sarah, came Xavier's voice through the speakers. Will you stay and help me help other kids? Sarah looked at the boy on her screen. The brave child who had inspired them to build technology that could heal with love as much as precision. The boy who chose to extend his stay on the moon not for adventure, but to ensure other children could receive the same life-saving care. Of course I will. Xavier, we're partners, remember? And partners stick together. Even in space? Especially in space. As Sarah began making plans to expand their operation and establish the Lunar Medical Center, she realized that their 15-year-old promise had evolved into something far greater than they had ever imagined. They hadn't just helped humanity reach the stars safely. They had discovered that love and compassion could literally heal at the genetic level when combined with advanced technology. The pod that had learned to care for Xavier had accidentally opened a door to curing diseases that had plagued humanity for generations. Mission control to Moonbase, Sarah said into her headset. We're staying. Let's build something that will help children around the world. Roger that, Earth, came Elon's reply. Quantum Leap Medical Center is officially under construction. Sarah smiled as she watched Xavier wave at Earth through his hospital window. The boy who had almost died from a genetic heart condition would now help establish the research center that could cure that same condition for thousands of other children. It was exactly the kind of impossible dream that she and Elon had promised each other they would pursue, no matter how crazy it seemed to everyone else. The difference was, this time their dream was coming true not because of advanced technology or unlimited funding, but because of a 12-year-old boy who had taught them that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't rockets or robots. It was love that refused to give up. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the observation deck of Quantum Leap Medical Center, watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon. The sight never got old. That blue and white marble hanging in the black sky reminding everyone on the moon base that they were working to help all the people living on that distant world. The medical center had grown from a small research outpost to a bustling facility with 30 doctors, 50 engineers, the most advanced medical equipment ever built. But the heart of it all was still Xavier, now 13 years old and completely healthy, who spent his days helping other children adjust to treatment on the moon. Dr. Chen, we're ready for you in Surgery Bay 3, announced Dr. Kim through the intercom. Sarah smiled and headed toward the surgical suite. Today they would be treating Maria, an 8-year-old girl from Mexico with the same genetic heart condition Xavier had overcome. She was their 15th pediatric patient, and each successful treatment helped them refine the pod technology further. As Sarah entered the surgical bay, she saw Maria lying on the operating table with a brave smile on her face, just like Xavier had 6 months ago. The pod, now called the Compassion Unit by the children who used it, sat beside her bed, its gentle blue lights pulsing in rhythm with Maria's heartbeat. How are you feeling, Maria? Sarah asked in Spanish, which she had been learning to better communicate with their international patients. A little scared, but excited, Maria replied. Xavier told me the robot gives the best hugs. Sarah laughed. Xavier had a way of making the advanced medical technology seem friendly and approachable to younger children. He had become the unofficial welcome committee for new patients, explaining how the pod worked and helping them feel safe. Xavier's right. The Compassion Unit is very good at taking care of children. The surgery proceeded flawlessly. The pod had learned so much from each patient that it now performed genetic-level healing with remarkable precision. Maria's procedure took only 3 hours compared to Xavier's original 6-hour emergency surgery. Patient recovery is excellent, reported Dr. Martinez, who had relocated from Earth to become the center's chief pediatric specialist. Genetic repair is already beginning. She should be completely cured within 2 weeks. After Maria was settled in recovery, Sarah found Xavier in the center's recreation room, video chatting the children from around the world who were waiting for their turn to come to the moon for treatment. Tell them about the Earthrise, suggested Emma, a 9-year-old from England who would arrive next month. It's incredible, Xavier said, turning his tablet toward the observation window. Every day you watch Earth come up over the moon's horizon, and you realize that everyone you've ever known lives on that beautiful blue dot. It makes you want to help everyone, not just the people in your own country. Sarah watched Xavier interact with the children and marveled at how much he had grown. Not just physically, though the low gravity and his cured condition had made him taller and stronger, but emotionally. He had become a bridge between the scared children arriving for treatment and the incredible technology that would heal them. Sarah, do you have a minute? Elon appeared in the doorway holding a tablet with an important-looking message on the screen. They walked to a quiet corner of the observation deck. Earth hung in the black sky above them, looking exactly as Xavier's mother had dreamed of seeing it. "What's the news?" Sarah asked. "The World Health Organization wants to discuss scaling up our technology for use on Earth. They've seen our success rates here, and they think we can adapt the compassion units for hospitals in remote areas where specialist doctors aren't available." Sarah felt her heart race with excitement. That would help millions of children. Exactly. But there's a catch. They want us to open source all our technology, make it freely available to any hospital or clinic that wants to use it, regardless of their ability to pay. Sarah thought about Marcus Webb's words 6 months ago, about helping children who couldn't afford advanced medical care. "What do you think?" "I think Xavier's mother would have loved this idea. She always believed that medical breakthroughs should belong to everyone, not just the wealthy." "And Xavier, what does he think?" Elon smiled. "He says we should do it immediately. He doesn't want any child to go without treatment because their family can't afford it." Sarah looked out at Earth, thinking about all the children living on that distant world who could benefit from the technology they had developed. "Then let's do it. Let's make compassion units available to every hospital on Earth." "There's one more thing," Elon said, showing her another message on his tablet. "Harvard Medical School wants to offer you the position of Director of Space Medicine. You'd split your time between the moon base and Earth, training doctors to use our technology." Sarah stared at the offer. A year ago, she had been content with her small research lab in Austin. Now she was being asked to lead a medical revolution that could change healthcare throughout the solar system. "It's a big decision," Elon continued. "You'd be giving up any chance of a quiet life." Sarah laughed. "I gave up on quiet when I decided to trust a 12-year-old boy's insights about robot psychology." Through the observation window, she could see Xavier helping Maria walk around the recovery ward, showing her how to move carefully in the low gravity while her heart healed. The boy who had almost died from a genetic condition was now helping other children overcome the same challenge. "You know what I realized?" Sarah said. "We never did finish our original promise from 15 years ago." "What do you mean?" "We promised to help humanity reach the stars together. But we've done more than that. We've proved that when humans do reach the stars, we can take our capacity for healing and compassion with us." Elon nodded, understanding. The technology isn't really about the robots or the surgery or even the genetic therapy. It's about showing that love can work across any distance, overcome any obstacle, and heal things that seemed impossible to fix. A soft chime indicated that it was time for the daily Earth communication session. Children from around the world would video call the moon base to talk with Xavier and the other young patients about their upcoming treatments. "Want to join me for today's calls?" Xavier asked, bouncing over to them with the tablet in his hands. Sarah and Elon followed Xavier to the communication room, where the main screen soon filled with the faces of children from 6 different countries. Each child was scared but hopeful, knowing that the same technology that had saved Xavier could save them too. "Remember," Xavier told them, "the most important thing isn't the robot or the surgery. It's that there are people here who care about you and want to help you get better. That's what makes the healing work." As Sarah listened to Xavier comfort frightened children across the vastness of space, she realized that their story had died full circle. 15 years ago, she and Elon had been young dreamers, trying to change the world. They had failed, separated by hurt feelings and broken promises. But sometimes the most important journeys take longer than expected. Sometimes you have to lose your way before you find the right path. And sometimes it takes a sick child to teach you that the most advanced technology in the universe is worthless without the human heart to guide it. "Sarah, Elon," Xavier called out during a break between calls. "I just got a message from NASA. They want to name an asteroid after our medical center." "That's wonderful," Sarah said. "But I told them they should name it after you two instead. After all, you're the ones who taught me that impossible dreams are just dreams that haven't come true yet." Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she looked at this remarkable boy who had transformed their lives in the future for medicine. Xavier had given them far more than they had given him. He had shown them that love really could build bridges across the stars. What should we call the asteroid? Elon asked. Xavier thought for a moment, then smiled. Promise keeper. Because that's what you both are. As Sarah watched Earth turn slowly beyond their window, she knew that Xavier was right. They had kept their promise. Not just to each other, but to everyone who believed that humanity's greatest adventures were still ahead. The silver bracelet on her wrist caught the light from Earth, its rocket charm sparkling like a real star. It no longer represented broken dreams or lost friendship. Now it symbolized something much more powerful, the unbreakable connection between hearts that refused to give up on love, no matter how far apart they may be. The stars were calling, and humanity was finally ready to answer. Not with cold technology or ruthless ambition, but with warm hearts, healing hands, and the unshakable belief that every child deserves a chance to see their dreams come true. That was the end of this incredible journey about Sarah, Elon, and brave young Xavier, proving that love and determination can overcome any obstacle, even the vast distance between Earth and the stars. I'm curious to know where you're listening from today. Drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you're in. It's amazing to think that people from all around the world can come together to hear about hope, healing, and second chances. If this tale touched your heart and inspired you to believe in the power of keeping promises, please give this video a thumbs up. Your support means everything and helps more people discover these uplifting messages. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest content featuring remarkable tales of human courage, scientific breakthroughs, and the triumph of the human spirit. Most importantly, please share this video with your friends and family. In a world that often feels divided, we need more content that spreads kindness and awareness about the incredible things we can accomplish when we work together. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey. Until next time, keep believing in the impossible, because today's dreams become tomorrow's reality.